Do this shit until they murder me.
Okay, it's Neo Tokyo in the studio with the legendary DJ producer UFO, Transcore pioneer, hardcore sensation, one of the original creators of the scene. Jason, thank you so much for giving us the time for this interview. So you've got some real good stuff you want to tell us today.
I've got a few bits and pieces that I think might be of interest, let's say that.
Oh, brilliant. So Jason, first off, what I'd like to know is this. I mean, you're responsible for some of the biggest tunes like Here Besides Me, you Rave Station from your RSR days. But my question to you, and I think a lot of people want to know this, how did it all begin? How did you get started?
What, in music?
In music in general, yeah.
Jeez, right. So, okay, so you have to go back to when I was a little kid, to be honest with you. When I was about 3. I think my mum bought me a toy guitar. Just a little, like a kiddie one, and I wouldn't put it down. It was the only toy I would play with. I wouldn't put it down. Fast forward a few years, started to get interested in like pop music and stuff, you know, when I was about sort of 6, 7, 8 years old. And that was around the time, it's sort of like the early 80s. So that's when all the big synthesizer pop started to happen. And then I was hearing records like, you know, stuff from Gary Newman, Human League, Kraftwerk, and seeing them use these mad keyboards with loads of knobs on and all of that, I thought, I want to do that. Obviously they were really expensive and I was only a little kid. My mum bought me a little toy practice organ. It was like a wind, you turn it on, it had a fan in it, and you could play with that. And I used to play 2 records actually to the music to work out. That took me a few years when I was a kid to work out all the notes, and it just went on from there. And I sort of always knew from sort of 10 years old really that I wanted to be a musician of some description. I didn't know what, but I knew I could play a bit of guitar, I could play drums, I could play keyboards, and it was all sort of self-taught. I wasn't trained to do it. I was just one of those people that just sort of can do it after a bit of practice. And then all through my teens got into DJing when I was sort of 12 or 13, again sort of early 80s, so it was all electro, hip hop, body popping, breakdance and all of that, along with Brisk, Paul Oakenfold. He started around that time. In fact, I showed him how to DJ.
Oh wow!
Because he went to the same school as me, and he was on our estate, and we had a youth club, and that's where I sort of learned how to DJ a little bit and taught him in there. So yeah, that's where the DJ thing come from.
Because I mean, you started off like with Ramos Supreme producing. I mean, how did the production side of it come along? How did you get into production now?
Okay, well that's thanks to another guy, Stu Devlin.
Legendary Stu J,
yeah. Before working with Ramos and Jeff on RSR, I was involved with Stu and his label, Man from Uncle. And he had another label for sort of hard trance stuff called Electric Kingdom, which I did a lot of tracks for. But he had a record shop in Southampton called Movement Records, and above it he had a bit of a studio. And back at that time, I didn't even know how to use I didn't have a clue about a studio. I'd done a couple of little records before with a mate when we'd gone to London in someone else's studio, but didn't have a clue about any of it. I just knew how to play the music. I didn't have a clue how to engineer. Stu's an old mate, known him since the 80s. He was in our breaking crew. It all stems from this hip-hop breaking thing in the 80s. And I approached him, I said, look Stu, I really need to know how to use a studio. I haven't got a clue how to do it. Could I use yours? And he was like, yeah. He said, you can use it all night and do it that way. So that's what I did for probably, 9 to 10 months, every night in there from sort of 7 o'clock at night right through till sort of 9, 10 o'clock the next morning, learning how to do it. And I literally just sat there until I could get my head around it. And that's sort of where it came from. But as any producer will tell you, you never stop learning. You know what I mean? I'm still learning stuff now. 30 years later, I'm still learning stuff. You know, new technology comes out. You have to change with the times and all that. So yeah, that's how I learned how to engineer, thanks to Stu's studio in the early 90s. That would have been
early 90s, guys. Like time flies by. It's like, yeah, because you've seen so many changes, haven't you?
Quite a few, yeah. I can remember a conversation with Stuart actually in the sort of early 90s where we were saying, wouldn't it be amazing if you could get like a whole studio in just one computer and just make a track with a computer and no other kit. And 20 years later we're there, you know, 25 years later, 30 years later we're there. So
yeah, so how did you get, as coming back to the old RSR thing, so how did, after Man from Uncle, how did you meet up with Ramos and Supreme and become part, because it was originally Ramos Supreme and the Sunset Regime.
It was, yeah.
So how did it become Ramos Supreme and UFO?
Well, I've known Ramos and Jeff for donkey's years. I went to school with both of them at different schools. So I've known them both since I was probably about 13. And Marley as well. Marley I've known since infant school, MC Marley. And they were all part of the same crew. For some reason, Rick Sunset decided he wasn't going to work with them, or they didn't want. I didn't know what happened, but he stopped working with them for whatever reason, and they were without a producer. And they're both like wicked DJs, but at that time didn't know how to engineer tracks. They needed someone who could play the music and operate all the studio and all the rest of it. And I put out a record on Stu's label. On Electric Kingdom, called The X-Files. It was a rip-off of the X-Files title track. It's like a trancey sort of thing. And they'd heard that and gone, we want him. Do you know what I mean? So they knew me, so they approached me and they said, look, do you want to come and work with us? So I said, yeah. And that's how it started. And we started doing stuff. I don't know what year it would have been, probably 96.
Late 96, 97, I remember.
I'd say 96 would be the first thing we did was a remix of Terminator on Billy Bunter's label. GBT, yeah. That was the first thing I remember doing with him. That was 96. So yeah.
Because I can remember like reading when we had magazines like Baseline M8 and Eternity Into the Core. I mean, you did a live PA at Fusion, Dream Trip at the Sanctuary.
That's right, yeah.
You even went to Northern Ireland and played to the Irish ravers.
Yes, we did, yeah.
What was it like in Ireland?
It was mad. Do you know what? I don't actually remember a lot of it.
That would be the Buckfast.
Yeah, they do get on it, let's say that.
No, I remember the interview in Baseline magazine, and you all three of you looked quite worse for wear in the photo they put. Yeah,
that would have been, yeah.
It was like that. It was the 90s. You'd get away with it then. Oh my god.
Couldn't do it now.
No, you couldn't. No, like everything's all PC today. So UFO, you have been responsible for in the past as one of the producers that have produced so much to go onto the CD compilations. Now you've been one of the artists that have appeared on most of the Bonkers CDs, from Bonkers 2 right up. And back then they were groundbreaking series all around the world. Japan, Germany, America. Bonkers was released not just in England but Australia or around the world. Now you're actually planning on bringing an album back for the scene like this, and is this new album that you're working on? Now I know it's all top secret, so can you put a little bit more information into what this album is you're working on?
Right, well it sort of came as an idea to me just driving around one day, and I thought, do you know what, there's not anybody doing any sort of compilation album. There are compilation albums, you've got Hardcore Heaven's out, but nobody's doing like a sort of bona fide series of compilation albums like Bonkers was, like Clubland Extreme was. Where you get to a point where a month before the next one's due out, everyone's buzzing about it. It's like, can't wait for this new, and all the DJs are playing out the tracks that are going to be on the album sort of a couple of months before, so everyone's sort of waiting for this album to come out. That from what I can see at the moment, that sort of doesn't exist at the moment. And I just thought to myself, it'd be a wicked idea if we could just get a series of albums in that vein. So that's the idea that I came up with the idea. I phoned Al, who's obviously the owner of the label. We're on 24/7. Ran it past him, to see what he thought, and he liked the idea. So we've sort of formulated. It's sort of still all in the planning stages at the moment, but we've sort of decided, well, it's definitely going to be mixed. It's going to be 3 CDs. Each one of us will mix our own CD, so it'll be me, Al Storm, Rob IYF, and we'll be putting selected tracks on our mixes and to see how it goes. But yeah, we're currently I know for me, I've definitely got sort of 4 or 5 tracks in line for that. Obviously I'm looking for more as well, so if there's any producers out there, send me what you got, because I'm looking. We're all looking, all 3 of us. What can I tell you about it that's definite? Right, well, it's definitely going to be called UK Hardcore. The idea is to say what it does on the tin. UK Hardcore 1, UK Hardcore 2, UK 3, 4, 5, whatever. So yeah, we're all looking forward to it. We're going to be, I have no idea on a release date. It will be probably, if we can get it right, probably by the end of the summer. The first one will be coming out. But we'll have to wait and see, just to see what we can do track-wise and all the rest of it. We've got distribution sorted out, so it will be a hard copy CDs.
Oh, brilliant.
And obviously it will be digital as well.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, so it's looking really cool.
So can we expect, is it going to be like Bonkers? Can we expect like cartoon versions of you, Al Storm and Rob Wyatt?
We talked about that. We did talk about that. No.
Oh.
I don't think we're going to be cartoonised. I think, the scene's moved on since then. I mean, back then when they first started doing Bonkers, it was a happy hardcore scene, right?
Yeah.
So it was very sort of jolly, cheesy, and very sort of like that. And I think Bonkers, the artwork on Bonkers, really did fit the sound of the music. The sound that we're doing now, a billion miles away from that. So if you start, I don't think it would fit as a concept with what the sort of sound we're trying to do. So we haven't, again, we're still in the planning stages, so we haven't come up with any concepts of what we're going to do. It'll probably, no, I don't know. It's the simple answer. But it won't be cartooned. No, I'm afraid, no.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that you're signed to 24/7 Hardcore. I mean, tell us a bit more about the label and your label friends. I mean, because it's like you've got all these great artists like Stompy have come back, Seduction's come back. How did this all come about?
Well, 24/7's been around for a long time. Al started the label. I don't know what year he started it. It's been floating around for a long time. It all came about by a complete fluke for me, anyway. Me getting signed to it. I've been, as some people will probably know, I've not been really around in the hardcore scene for quite a few years. I've been floated around, but I haven't really been doing anything massive. I got a random call one day from Lee Stompy, who I did a track with Jeff in the 90s called Here Beside Me. It was on Hectech, I think, Hectech Records. Random call from Lee. I haven't spoken to Lee for 20 years. Not seen her, heard from him, not spoke to him. Got a random call. What he was saying to me is that he'd just remixed Here Beside Me, and he had the original vocals. Did I want them to have a go at doing a remix? So I'm sort of not doing much at the moment. So I thought, well, yeah, all right, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I got him to send me the vocals, did the remix, played it to Lee, who I didn't know at the time was already signed to 24/7. I didn't know that. Sent it to Lee. He was like, "That's amazing, I love it." Next thing I know, I've got a call from Al Storm.
Oh wow!
Who I've known for years as well. I've known him since probably the 90s, the late 90s. Yeah, he says to me, "Oh yeah, that Here Beside Me remix. Can I put it out?" I wasn't expecting anyone to do anything with it. I just really did it for the exercise of doing it. So I just went, "Yeah, all right." He said, "Do you want to sign to my label?" I said, "Yeah, okay."
You make it sound so easy.
That's really how it was. It was that simple. That's how it came about. It was just a series of fluky events.
Yeah, it's like the doors open and you take the opportunity.
Well, it sort of wasn't even that really. It was just, from my end, it was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, yeah. Because I wasn't actually expecting to do anything else. I just thought, well, I'll sign to the label, and I'll probably just be one of those background people that puts out a record every 3 years. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't really give it much thought. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever, I'll sign. You know, we'll you know. He said, okay. And then obviously since then, I've been banging out a few tunes. He's done Al mixed the album Hardcore Heaven, the latest one. Got a few tunes on that. All sorts going on, all sorts. It's just gone a bit mental. And then off the back of that, I'm starting to get DJ bookings again, which was a big surprise to me because I didn't really honestly didn't believe people would remember who I was even. You know, so it's been a bit mad the last sort of year.
Yes, because now you say you've got DJ bookers there. As you know, I come from the cosplay scene, and I'm trying to introduce cosplay into the rave scene, similar to what the American scene and the Australian scenes have. Now,
Sure.
you recently played in San Francisco, America. How does the American scene differ from the UK scene?
Do you know what? It'll probably be easy to say what's similar because there's nothing similar. They're absolutely, completely different from. I don't know if San Francisco's like its own. I get the impression that San Francisco itself is its own thing. I don't think you can gauge the whole of America with that. But you know, big differences would be the club like we were playing in before we went on playing hardcore. Some guy was playing house music, and then somebody before him was playing like breaks. This was all in the main room. It wasn't separate rooms. It was in the main room. And all the same people stay for the whole night. So it's not like one crowd listen to that bit and then they go and then another crowd comes in. The whole night, the same crowd. That's one of the big differences to get your head around. That was like really struck. I was kind of, wow, that's really mad.
It's going back to 24/7. It's almost like, for me, coming back to hardcore after 15 years out of it, it almost feels like it wasn't the excitement in 2003, 2002 when it was coming back. And to me, it seems like, you know, as you know, I'm from the cosplay scene. I'm coming back now and finding that 24/7 have created a scene within the scene. Would you say that that's true?
I guess technically you could say that. I wouldn't say any of us would describe ourselves as a scene within the scene. I think it's that idea comes about mainly because we've all just made a pact really between ourselves to just do what we want to do, music wise and every other way. Really, she sounded sexy.
Yeah, she did.
Low battery warning.
We should sample that and make a harp tune out of it.
Yeah. So yeah, because we're not following the scene, all right, and that's quite a conscious decision by most of us anyway. Rob, for instance, makes quite current sounding stuff, but it's still very Rob. It still sounds like you can tell his tunes a mile away. You know what I mean? He's got his own sound under that umbrella of it being the new sound, the current sound. For me, I'm basically making tunes or trying to make tunes that sound as I've always made them. What's worked for me in the past is, you know, big vocals, big riffs, big breakdowns, hands in the air, sort of euphoric sort of stuff. So that's really what my jam is. Do you know what I mean? So, but because I'm doing that, it could be perceived from the outside as like, oh, they're doing their own little scene, which is not really the purpose of what we're doing. What we're doing is we just want to do our own thing. We don't want to follow the cool crowd.
Yeah, I like that.
Because I think a lot of people are doing that, and that's fine. You know what I mean? It's cool. There's some upfront producers right now that are really smashing it. You know, your Max Wolfs and people like that. Jacoby, another one.
Yeah, he's a lovely bloke.
You know, yeah, he is a top guy. They're pushing the boundary of what's new, what sounds new. And to a lot of people, you get these same old arguments, you know, well, that's not hardcore. You know, you do get a lot of that. We got a lot of that in the past when we did the Transcore stuff.
Yeah.
You know, or a little bit later on with me and Hixie when we sort of slowed everything down. We did an entire Bonkers album. Yeah, Bonkers 7. His mix on that was basically all, me and him under different names.
Mr. X and Mr. Y.
Yeah, we did. We had all sorts of weird names. El Nino and a Niki or something. I don't know. We just made them up. But that was a conscious effort. That was like, we want to change the sound. Because at that time it was it late 90s, the happy hardcore thing had kind of died a death. Nobody was really into it. people were bored of it, and we thought, well, we got to change it to. Otherwise, if we don't, the scene will just disappear. That's how we felt about it. So, you know, for me, I was into trance music a lot. You know, the Ferry Corsten sort of era, 1998, 1999. You know, Binary Finery, Ferracoccia, all those sorts of tunes. So I said to Hicksy, well, let's can we not incorporate some of that, but speed it up so it's hardcore speed? And so we tried it, and that ended up being that album. And it was not very well received at the time. At the time, it was a lot of people really saying, "That's not hardcore. What are you doing? What are you doing?" But we just went with it because at the end of the day, when you're making a record, what do? You know what I mean? You can't.
You've got to stick with what you believe in.
Yeah, and we did believe it, and as it worked out in the end,
it was the blueprint for the Raver
it
Baby
worked.
sound.
It went on to be Raver Baby and all the rest of it. Darren Styles, Mark Breeze, all the rest of those guys. You know what I mean? Making the massive anthems that they did. So it just goes to show you, when you do stick to it and change it, at first it's going to be jarring to people. They're going to be like, well, this isn't happy hardcore. It's not. But no, it's not, because we changed it. Do you know what I mean? And it was it took a bit of guts to go through with it, but you know, React, who put the albums out, were sort of questioning it as well. You know, do we really want to put this on the album? Hicksy, are you sure you want to do this? And we were like, yes, we just do it. And we just went with it. So yeah, it worked out in the end. You know, I think if you trace back the history of it, it was probably the forerunner, probably to what's out now, probably the new stuff now. You know, without that sound, you probably wouldn't have got to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Transcore, I mean, you were responsible for the whole genre. You, Billy Bunter, Sharky. I mean, the RSR sound, for example, you had like tracks like Rave Station. You did Terminator. You even did with Stu J Resonate. I mean, and you were one of the core creators of that sound. I remember there was an article about you in DJ Magazine when they did the whole Transcore special issue.
Right.
Would you ever, like now hardcore's had resurgence, would you ever be the forerunner again for Transcore? Do you think it would ever have a revival?
Well, from what I understand, it sort of hasn't gone away. It's gone on its own timeline. It's like its own sort of progression. I guess now it's called Freeform, right? I think do you know what? I think that they've, over the years, they've split into two very distinctive scenes. What you find is people that like the freeform stuff, what I call the serious music, you know, the proper music in inverted commas, what you'll find is those people possibly won't like the more mainstream hardcore that, say, you know, myself or any of them are doing. They're two distinct things. If you look at them together, they don't kind of intermix very well. So add that to the fact that back when I was doing it, or when we were doing it, back then it was new. Nobody was doing stuff like that. It was brand new. It was a completely different sound. Again, wasn't very well received at first. At first, people were like, I'm not into that. It's not hardcore. And we pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and eventually, it's funny, 15 years down the line, now they're anthems. I'll get people messaging me saying, oh, that tune changed my life. And it's like, at the time when we put it out, everyone was like, what's that? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if you could sort of be at the forefront of something that's already around. And I'm telling you now, from the bits and pieces I've heard in the freeform scene, I probably wouldn't be able to make it as good as what they're doing, because they've got it nailed, some of those guys. So we'll leave it to the Eric Orpheus and we'll leave it to would say so,
AMS and that lot.
You know, I'm all about, I would like to push some sort of new sound in the future, but I don't know what that is. And it usually only comes around when I just decide to do something completely different. and it catches on. But that doesn't always work. Sometimes you do something different and it really is different. Do you know what I mean? Not in a good way.
The question on Facebook that everyone has been excited about is somebody is coming back to UK hardcore. There's a lot of excitement, and Jason has refused to say who it is until now. Jason, put us out of misery. Who is coming back to hardcore to work with you on a tune?
I'm not going to tell you.
You can't get us in for an interview and not do it.
Well, it's only because, well, no, I am going to tell you, but there's a backstory, a slight backstory to it. The guy concerned, it took me probably overall a couple of years to get him to even talk about coming back. When he sort of said, yeah, all right, we'll do something, I said, can I announce it? I said, I want to announce it, you know, and he was like, no, not yet. So he's probably going to shoot me in the head for doing this now anyway. It's MC Marley, all right?
Excellent.
He's going to be doing some sets with me in the near future. He was supposed to be doing the Hardcore Awards with me, which is next weekend. But he just can't do it. He's got other things he's got to do, so he can't make it. That would have been his sort of comeback. Do you know what I mean? Which I'm gutted about, because it would have been amazing to have him there to do that. But he will be coming on the road with me somewhere, sometime, pretty soon. And we've discussed also, which everyone's been banging on at me for years and years and years. We did a track called Connection.
Yes.
And it sort of ended up being like a bit of a Raver Baby anthem, because it named all the people that are in the crew. We had the RBC, Raver Baby crew, and it named all of us in his lyrics. And it's just become one of those tracks. I'll still play it now. In fact, if I don't play it, people are like ready to hit me. Right, so I have to play it. People have been on and on and on. You should remix it. You've got to do an update, a 2015 update, a 2018 update, do a 2020 update. Now I don't know if we're going to do an actual version of Connections, but we're talking about getting him in the studio again to do something. That's really all I can say at the moment, because it's literally you now know what I know. You know, everyone's on the internet's going mad. You know, is it this person? Is it that person? You know, I think the thread now's got like 220 comments, because people are trying to guess it, which sort of is quite funny, really, because, you know, I only sort of mentioned it in passing, really. It was just like I just put up excited that somebody cool's coming back to the scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thinking of, you're very musical orientated. Now, I know hardcore is hardcore, but I know most ravers do have other genres they like. I mean, you've done everything from hands up music to house, drum and bass. Now, if you had the chance to work with one band in the world, and you know, the band of your dreams, and you could produce an album for them, who would that band be?
Any genre?
Any genre.
U2. U2 have got a special place in my heart. I love the band. I've loved them for years. I'm a proper U2 fan. Yeah, that would be the dream job. That would be like, wow, that would be amazing. So okay. Yeah, U2.
What is your favourite U2 song of all time? And that's a hard question.
Oh my god. Probably not one of the obvious ones that everyone knows. Probably something like Even Better Than The Real Thing. Or check it out on Spotify. U2, Even Better Than The Real Thing. You'll know what I'm talking about.
There's also a Paul Oakenfold remix.
There was, and I've got a story about that. Yeah. So, right, when that record was due to come out, that it was Lemon, Orange remix, right? Yeah, he did that, but at the same time he did Even Better Than The Real Thing. I'm trying to remember the chronology here, but we went to, I think it was me and Stu J, went to an EMI record do, like at a hotel. It was for all the top brass in the company. We just blagged our way in, basically. Said we were DJs. We weren't, we were just blagging, do you know what I mean? So we got in there, and no, it wasn't EMI, it was Island Records, who U2 were signed to, alright? So we get in there, and there's all these sort of record executive types in there, you know, people that have been in the business for 40 years and all the rest of it. And then out of nowhere, Paul Oakenfold shows up. And I said to Stu, is that Paul Oakenfold? He said, yeah. So I've got a bone to pick with him, being a U2 fan, right? So I go over to Paul Oakenfold. I said, hello Paul, I'm Jason. He's like, yeah, okay. I said, so I got chatting to him, you know what I mean? He's cool, really cool guy. And I says to him, so this remix, this, you know, the U2 thing, how did that come about? Are you a fan? And he said, well, no, not really. I saw him, but jokingly, I said, you're a prick. Which everyone around me was holding their head like, did he just call him a prick? Anyway, he was really cool about it. He said, no, he said it came about through however his management got in touch with his management, and it came about like that. And then I said to him, you know, I would cut my arm off, literally cut my arm off to do that. to do a remix for them, or what you've just asked me, produce their album. That would be I could probably die and be happy then. So yeah, it's that's it. That's cool. It was cool.
An interesting fact, did you know that when they released Better Than the Real Thing, they released the original version and the remix at the same time, and it was number one and number 2 in the chart?
I did know that, yeah, and I was gutted.
I've got one more question for you. Can we get you and Marley to play at the next Neo Tokyo?
Well, you could definitely book me for that. Rich, I'd certainly mention it to him. I'm guessing that he'll say yes to this, mainly for the fact that he's talking about coming back. So I'll be happy to mention it to him.
Oh,
Let's
thank
say
you.
that.
Okay, brilliant. Jason, thank you very much. This is 24/7 in Neo Tokyo. Jason, thank you.
Thank you very much.